Amen.
Yeah.
Have a seat. So you can thank Stacy for the music this morning, the music selection. Good job, Stacy. That was a jam. So we're going to hear from her. Faith that can move mountains. I got to tell you, I met this family in tragedy. We talked a little bit about that when Charles gave his. But to watch their growth over the last 2 years has been mind-blowing. To see where they are today, considering what they've been through. But Stacy, we're excited. I'm excited. Come on. Preach it.
Turn this on for me. My finger to my
She'll be live.
Why didn't just hit it?
Oh, yeah. My bad. Never mind.
Now? Yes.
That would be me.
Miss Judy, put this in my pocket. Like, just so I don't, like, hang it. Oh, right there. My hands don't work. Okay. Hello. Hi. Hi, guys. My name is Stacy Arnett Taylor Sharp. Arnett. Sorry. That was my first name. That's my son's name. It's funny because Brian misspelt it and we talked about it. So sorry, John is on my heart. I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in Plainview, Texas in 1969, July 21st. My dad didn't go in the room because he was watching the astronauts land on the moon. And it really ticked my mom off. And that's one thing that I always remember. They were married in 66, had my brother in 67, me in 69. My brother's not here, but y'all know Larry. Y'all see him. They weren't married, but maybe, I think they got a divorce when I was 2. And so back then that wasn't heard of. If your mom divorced your husband back then, she had to be, a whore, So she was shunned and ridiculed through his family. So long story short, I was 6 months old and we moved to Odessa, Texas. Back then they had lead in their paint and they redid the house and I was a baby. And I got really, really sick. And they said I hurled. Execution is just projectile. It is horrible, feet. And they took me to the hospital, whatever. And when I was almost just about turning 2, I got really, really sick. And back then, prednisone was high on steroids was saving a lot of people. So they didn't know what it was. And so they started pumping me full of steroids. And the problem I had was my kidneys wouldn't filter the bad fluids. It filtered the good fluids. It's called something nephrosis. I can't remember it. But that means all the bad fluid gets in you and you just swell up. And I wish I had a picture. I do have. I should have said. But I was the cutest, fattest little round thing you ever saw. Anyways, and they had to special make my clothes. I was just sick. I was a sick little baby. So I stayed in the hospital for about 10 months here in Odessa. And finally, some specialists stepped in and took me to Dallas. And that was Scottish. One was Scottish Rite, and the other one's Children's Hospital in Dallas. They save all kinds of kids' lives still today. And so I stayed there. I got some medical help through kidney procedures of them taking biopsies to help find out. And I seen other kids that were fat like me, swollen, and the medicine that I took had a lot of side effects. And the steroids, if you have any weak bones when you're a baby like that, it eats them. So it started with my hip. So then I became a Scottish Rite child. And I went there with braces on their legs, all that. So me almost dying put me to a different kind of, stature in my family. It was like, oh my gosh, she's going to die. Y'all know that feeling of how you are extra taken care of. And that was my grandma. Sorry.
Don't be.
It's all right. I was crying in the chapel. That was her favorite song. So my grandma took really good care of me, and so did my mom, but she was a single mom. So she worked a lot. She worked 3 jobs. Anyways, I got better, and then I'd get, I'd go in remission, come back out, but they always took really good care of me. Well, my mom at this time, she had been divorced, and she just couldn't get down how to find a good guy, just wasn't taught, because all this time growing up, we had a bar behind the house. My grandfather was the bud man, and it was a party 24/7 growing up. It was a party. Beer was just a part of our life. And I remember it was horrible, just growing up in that. It was not healthy at all. But back then, booze was okay. Everything else you were shunned upon on. You were put down on, you were this, you were that. So beer was just wonderful. And so we grew up with everybody drunk and making barbecue. And just like back in the old days, everyone would come eat, right? Well, my mom got with this man, and he took us to, they took us to Louisiana. And in Louisiana, my mom started going to a church, and I can't remember the name of it, but Elvis Presley's stepbrother was there. And he was signing Bibles. And he signed a Bible that put Romans 10:13, for who shall ever call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. And that is what I stand for. That's what I believe in. I preach it all the time. And that was just a little girl, right? So my mom went through some rocky relationships, but she got saved in Louisiana. Yeah. I remember the day she got saved. I remember she wasn't the mom that would make us go to church and ride the bus. She went with us. And it just depended on the man in her life at the time, what a jerk he might have been or whoever. And there was some abuse, not really physical, but mental abuse in those situations. And those, mom's got a boyfriend, that kind of thing. And I'm real stubborn, very. And so I would make it worse because I wouldn't do anything that I should have done. So I drove my mom crazy one time as a kid, and she had a nervous breakdown. And that was hard because I had caused it, not yet knowing that I could have just shut up. I could have, just been that kid. But nope, not red.
Nothing's changed.
So after that, we went home we lived in LaPlace, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And then from there we got to come home because Mom was sick. So in all those times of leaving Granny's house, we always managed to get back there to Granny and Grandpa's. And so she found a man named James Harrington at the time, and she married him. And she was getting her life back together, and she took off from Odessa with him to go. She was becoming a trucker because all my family are truck drivers, and most of them. Anyways, they started from there. She left, and me and my brother stayed with my aunt and uncle. Well, before all this, we had a barbecue. I think it was like Easter. Around in Easter, a year before that, we were all outside under the tree, my grandma's tree. And I remember hearing my mother say, if anything ever happened to me, I will haunt y'all all. Do not let my kids go to their dads. And that plays a really crazy role in a kid's mind. Out of all those people, our family, friends, she made sure she said that. So everybody's like, oh, shut up, Phyllis. No. And we went along. Wasn't a year later, Mom got killed in a horrible accident, an 18-wheeler. Anyways, I'm the one that answered the phone. They left us at Bill Mikey's, and they were going to start us a new life, and we assured them to follow, right? Well, all these years of my mom and her sister, there was 4 of them, 2. My Uncle Eddie, my mom, my Uncle Pee Wee, and my Aunt Bill. Those 2 girls made a bond that if anything ever happened to either one of them, the other would take their children, right? So everyone kind of just corralled around us anyways because we didn't really have a dad figure. But Granny and Grandpa always seemed to make it come through, like help Mom out. Mom was really proud too, so she didn't ask for a lot of help. Anyways, when Mom died, I answered the phone call. My aunt was out bowling, and I answered the call. And that at the time was my stepdad, James. I could hear in his voice something was wrong, and he said, I need to talk to Michael. And that was my uncle. And so I hollered at my uncle, but I stayed on the phone. And I heard him say, Phyllis has been hurt really bad. You guys got to come, you know. And so I remember slamming the phone down, screaming. And you got to remember, I was 10 years old, right? And so my aunt would come home from bowling with 3 cops behind her. Thank God they knew my uncle, the judge, right? Like it was, back then we could still, you knew who you knew, and that's how it worked. So Uncle Eddie and Mikey took off. By this time we got another call. She died on the operating table. So she's dead. And that happened when I was 10. It was so that was really hard. And she was a good mom. And all we were missing was like our dad. But our family listened to her and didn't let us have anything to do with dad. That was something they didn't want to get haunted by, you know? And they did what Phyllis said. And all this time I wanted to know why my dad wasn't there. And there wasn't a lot of Jesus back then. My grandma was a Jehovah's Witness, and she had to hide it from Grandpa. So we had these secret meetings, and I remember hearing a lot of it, but as a kid I didn't listen, you know. But if anyone was at Granny's house, it was Stacy. And so I spent a lot of time with my grandma, right? And she was like the best grandma and all that. Well, when Mom died, she became an alcoholic. She became just a horrible drunk. I mean, horrible. But why wouldn't you be? Your whole life is around booze, right? So watching her, and she tried really hard to teach me that there was a Jesus. She did. I listened. I knew what was right, and I knew what didn't sound good. So I kind of just followed it in my brain and went on, right? Well, right after Mom got saved before she died, everybody kind of got religious there. I remember Bill and Mikey went to church, but they all started, you know, trying. And Mom died and it stopped. Everybody was mad at God. Why would you do this? So it was an underlying issue. We just didn't talk about Jesus. Except Granny would. She would. And then the drunker she got, the louder she got, and the more in trouble she got. And so that's a cycle in a family to where, you know, you just kind of cringe. But you know that she's got to say it. Well, Granny would stay drunk and sing that Elvis song over and over and over. Her heart was broke. Her daughter was gone. And nobody was listening to her. But I listened. I would listen to my grandma. No matter what, you know. And then when Mama died, my aunt had a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, Jackie and Michelle. Those are my cousins. Mikey and Bill decided to take me and Larry on. So she had a 4 and a 6-year-old and a 10 and a 12-year-old. A 10-year-old that had an attitude that was just, it was a lot. I was a handful. Not like my son John a handful, but I was a handful. And you know, you get to a point where everybody's trying to boss you around and tell you what to do. And you just stop listening. You don't care. Because the right person's not there telling me what to do, right? My mom's going. So I rebelled. And so from the greatest aunt in the world, she gets me and my brother. And you got to understand there's lawsuits going on. There's lawsuits, lawyers, whatever you call when you have to go sit and talk to them, you know, and it's about the step that it's just, we're going through it. It's a lot. We have to move to New Mexico. Anyways, and it was a lot for my aunt. She said she could handle it, but it started showing over the years she couldn't. She couldn't handle it. And she, as everyone does, gets mad and gets angry and gets violent. and a lot of physical abuse. More mental, but a lot of phys. The older I got, the more physical, because I just wasn't gonna stand for her to hit on me. She would hit my grandma. It was just, we had a lot of hell at home. But all in all, I knew that I could talk to Jesus and God. That's what Granny told me. You always talk to him. He's when you don't have anyone, you have Jesus.
Amen.
Amen.
And so I talked to Jesus at night, right? Being kind of mad, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little concerned about my God. I was thinking, why this? A lot of unanswered little kid questions that I probably shouldn't have been asking anyways, because of the situation. So we went to we moved to New Mexico, and then Mikey, my uncle, had a really good job. Mikey lived in, we were Orfield trash our whole life, but Mikey could make some good money. So we were all right. We all had money, had everything we wanted. But there was always something missing in that house. And it was Jesus. And Charles can vouch for this. And then Grandpa gets, I have caution in 87. I lose my grandma 5 months later. That one was a hard one. I never thought I could hurt so much after my grandma died. But I toughened up. I stood up.
Amen.
And took control of my life. I had a baby then. And this was oh no, I'm the black sheep of the family. Oh, here's Phyllis's daughter. She had a kid. But how I know the first time that I had Jesus, because everyone that let me down, I prayed for a baby. I prayed for my daughter. I actually prayed for her over and over and over for about 3 months, knowing that I was a teenager. I was doing things I shouldn't do. All kinds of, boys I hung out with the boys that were more fun than the girls. Girls will stab you in the back. And so guys are a lot more fun. And so, I prayed for her. I asked Jesus to send me an angel that looked like my mama, so I could love her or love that baby unconditionally and never have to worry. Just that kind of love, because I really miss my grandma. And then, of course, Jesus gave me caution. I believe she's a gift. And I believe she's my mom's, right? She's Phyllis's she's a little Phyllis, in other words. And I'm so glad my grandma got to have stuff to do with her. But Granny was, she was always drunk, so she couldn't do much. I wouldn't let her hold her. I didn't, Granny smoked a lot, so I didn't want her burnt by a cigarette, that kind of stuff. Just the same old grab her from Granny. But I had a baby. And then that was in 87. Then I finished high school. I got a diploma, big, fat, and pregnant. Walked across the stage. My people, all my family was happy. Like, oh, she did it. Right? I did go to a private school within there because I got kicked out of OHS because I like to fight. So I got put in a private school. But then in the private school, it was Brother Dewey's a wonderful preacher. He's passed now. But anyways, my brother married his niece. And we were like this family going to Shiloh. And that's where I also would talk about Jesus and God, right? And just the love of it. It just felt good. But to go to my aunt's house, it just stopped at the door and it wasn't right, So then I met John's dad in 91, I believe. And he was so good to caution. So of course, she needed a dad. And so here we go. We're going to start this little family. And I get pregnant one time and I have a miscarriage. Well, I swear God told me, don't do this again, Red. You need to do this right. Because I was raised with morals. When you say I do, it means I do. Yeah, all that stuff we were inbred with. But did they act on it and do it right all the time? Their way they did, But it was like, you do this, 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 and this. So I married John. Nobody liked John's dad. No one. They were like, don't do it. By this time, I'd already had a miscarriage. Boom, I got pregnant again. So I'm like, okay, wasn't even really realized about that one pregnancy. But it hurt, but I knew that it was probably best to keep going. So I got married to John's dad, and not knowing what I was getting myself into, I did not know he was a drug addict. I had no clue. I knew that he drank a lot, but I was on hard drugs. I didn't know anything about it. That wasn't around our house. It was just beer was okay, booze was great, right? Let's get drunk. That's how it was. Well, I wasn't the one. I wasn't going to be a drunk. So I met John's dad and slowly learned drug addict. Putting myself in that position, I don't want to turn around and lose my little boy's dad. So I went with him. I took off with him, and I went to Arizona. In a horrible community. There was no God there. It was horrible. There was methamphetamine. I mean, it was the horrible place. What's it called? That
Renzi.
No. That song about those women that live in that town. And they all do the same thing. It's a song. Stepford Wives. It was that community. It was horrible. And I was young and dumb, and I had no idea what I was, right? And I was just like, and then the drugs and it didn't feel right there. So it lasted a little while, and I moved 21 times in 6 years. 21. And I probably forgot a few, right? Because I got tired of paying all the rent and doing everything. I worked, I did it all. But this whole time I'm still giving it to Jesus. I'm still praying. I'm still telling my kids about it. John never went to church. No, we didn't go to church. We didn't. Well, around this time when John was about 18 months old, when I was 13, I forgot to say this, I wanted to see my dad. So they all got together and took me to my dad, right? And all I have is a question is, why weren't you there for Mom's funeral? And all he could say was he found out too late. And that where was my brother? He never said nothing about me. He didn't. And so I was like, I heard all this ugly stuff, so I was just kind of like, And then when I got pregnant with Caution, I wasn't going to tell him because it was none of his darn business. Right? This is my baby. Screw you. In other words. So I went along with my life, and I had John. And by this time, I had gotten money. We had money. We had a lot of stuff. We had everything anyone would ever want. But we didn't have much Jesus in our house, right? Through my aunt and uncle, right? There was a lot of money. We had a swimming pool. We had four-wheelers. My brother rode a go-kart. He raced. We had everything a kid would want. But the last thing that we were getting was Jesus. You could tell it in that home. Now that I look back, those were some hard days without Jesus, right? But the whole time he was there. And you don't realize it till you go through it. You have to go through it to know what you went through to come back in reality when you get older, right? And so Grandpa got sick and had cancer, and I'm pregnant with John. He won't get to see his grandson, this baby, but he knew, and he passed away. That one was hard. Grandpa was a 6'5", 6'7", 350-pound man. Nobody bucked that system. Only me. I was the only one that would tell him off 22 times, in the same breath. And he never swatted me because I was sick little. So in his head, he wasn't going to touch me, right? And so back then, it was just him doing whatever he wanted and me growing up seeing it. By the time I got older, I'm like, that ain't the way it's going to go, Grandpa. Then he got sick and we all loved on him. And this is also how he never talked about church. He only talked that what he was doing when he was growing up back in the day. These were in the 30s, 40s, that they were all getting drunk behind the church, whether all parents were in there. they're all sitting in the line. No, whopping the kid that's being bad over here. That kind of church, right? That we all know it's funny, but we've all done it. Well, they were drinking. And that's all he has stories about is about church. So we never talked about church with Grandpa. When Grandpa got church, one of his really good friends, he had Budgie and the Winos. And one of the Winos was a really good old guy that loved to cook but was a preacher. And he was the sweetest man, right? Well, I guess Grandpa was actually going to him talking about God and dealing with his, because when you're about to go home, you start hollering, let me in the door, right? Well, Grandpa started hollering. And so we talked a little bit about Jesus, but still not too much. It was private, right? So all this time, you just have this yearning to go to God's house and you can't go. You don't know how. You don't know how to go step into a church without feel like they're going to condemn you or look at you, I had a really good friend named Phyllis, and she just reminded me of Miss Judy. She was wonderful. And she'd pick us up, me and Caution, and she'd take us to church. And I'd sing the, hallelujah, and I'd praise him, and I would just go home and I'd talk about it to my husband at the time, and there was nothing coming back, right? And a couple of times John's dad says, "You're not going to take my son there." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I am." What? And we would fight. He would say he would be a Permian Panther. I'd say he'd be a Bronco, OHS Bronco. So that was our fight, right? But I'm like, you know he's going to be in my whatever church I take him in, right? He might not go to those high schools, but John's going to go with me. That's my kid. That's my little redhead boy. And so I would take John as a baby. And even though I'm going to have to fight with John's dad about it, but we go to church with Phyllis. Well, I was trying to work on my marriage, and we moved again. We moved twice there or something. And nobody told me she died until months later. And I don't know if it's a namesake or if she was just an angel in disguise through Jesus to help me get through what I was going through, because she was really good friends with my aunt, but she knew my aunt was abusive. And physically too, but more mentally, more verbally. Just to beat your mind down, to make you think you're not good enough, that kind of thing. So Phyllis really helped me through that time of my life, trying to get what was right and what was wrong. And this whole time I got this husband of mine that's doing whatever, whenever, however. It's just hell. And I lived in pure hell, right? Which I couldn't go tell my family, because they already going to say, "I told you so," right? "We told you not to do it." Well, I wasn't going to let them know. So proudly, I did it myself. I grew up some, raised my kids. And I forgot, when Caution was born, my brother was a ordained minister through Shiloh, and he baptized her. And it was the sweetest. It was the best ceremony, you guys. I'll never forget that feeling of calling Jesus to take care of this baby, right? And so that was really special. Even though my brother wasn't doing right by that time to be preaching, he was trying. Larry struggled his own self. But anyways, my brother baptized her. And my family weren't real happy about it, but they're like, they didn't want to know God. They were so mad at God for taking my mom that they forget there was little ones left. They forgot that you have to keep living and believing in Him, because it's going to make it better, right? So I moved back from John's dad. I leave him. And I come to New Deal. Well, my daddy had a place. By this, when John was a year and a half in Arizona, my daddy showed up on my doorstep. And what a blessing. My dad was just as lost as I was when I was 13. And my daddy got himself together and started going to church and praising God, and came to see his family, right? And so my brother never had any kids, so it was just me and my 2 kids. Fell in love with his grandchildren. Looked at my daughter and said, "That's little Phyllis." He's the one that was in love with her first, my mom. And so we all got back together. He saw the turmoil I was living in. He knew that John's dad wasn't any good for me, but he's going to let me live my life. And so he kept telling me in Arizona, "You need to get some Jesus in this house. You need to get Jesus in this house, Stacy." And I'm like, "He's in here, Dad." He said, "Nope. You know what I mean." And I just, look at Daddy like he was half crazy, and I knew what I was doing. Well, me and John didn't work out much longer. It was time for all that to end, and I escaped, from Arizona in 1998 with kids in the car. One didn't have no shoes on, no clothes, nothing, but I made it home. And where did I come? I came here. I came right over to Wolford and my dad. And he said, "I got you, don't worry about it." Because by this time, I had kind of taken John's dad. They kind of shunned me from the family. Kind of like, So I couldn't go home, really. And I tried. But, of course, my aunt was sitting there. And she was just too much. So I called upon my daddy, which he always came. And I came here. And he had a piece of land in New Deal. 35. Well, he was going to put me in shallow water in a trailer park, and then something happened. And then 3512 County Road. That was my address, 6,000. So, okay, so we moved there, right? Kids have to go to this stupid little town called New Deal. I hated it. I never wanted them to go, but I knew that I should not. I didn't like the way the people were. So I didn't want to put them in John in Lubbock. He needed to be raised in the country, my boy, right? Because I had trouble with him. And so I bring him here, and I have to enroll him in New Deal. And in that school, if you're not born and bred there, they don't care about you. You're shunned. All they want is your kid in there for money. You guys know, New Deal's horrible. I say it all the time. Anyways, so I stay there a little while, and John's dad's telling me he's going to take my baby. He's going to come get John. Try it. That's mine. I picked you to be the dad. That's my baby, right? Caution was already mine, right? But John's, his daddy's on his birth certificate, all that. And so John's mom was always a cop and stuff, and they always threatened me with that crap. So I'm at home, I'm in Texas, and I don't care. So I get a job in New Deal at the cafeteria. I'm going to watch my kid. I'm going to make sure they don't come get John Sharp the third, right? So I start working, and I'm one heck of a worker. Always worked. Had to work because John's dad wouldn't keep a job. So I'm a hard worker, right? And I'm going to raise these kids the way I want to. And in the back of my mind, I was still praising him, talking to him, but we weren't making the move to go nowhere. And I wasn't going to go in that town in that church. Are you kidding? Those people already, they already don't treat me right. So why would I? And I was treated really bad in Arizona too, because if you're not one of them, you're just a flow in, flow out. So looking for someone where really to establish my family, my daughter said, "You need to meet Charles." She was best friends at school with his son. And I'm like, he's really cool, Mom, all this, plays the drums, meet. So I didn't say nothing. From there, John's dad left me alone, so I moved to the new Fina, and it was a huge, new, beautiful place. Now it's horrible, but it had a catfish place in there. So I became the breakfast cook, right? In this time, I met him and his wife and his family, right? His wife started saying things that weren't true and marked me as a homewrecker in the town. So I'm really shunned by now, right? I'm coming in, I'm trying to take somebody's husband, right? So, and I hated it there. I hated my kids going there. It was ugly. So my daddy is still over, like down on my property saying, you need to go home and go to church with me. And he went to someplace in Littlefield, but he would take little John with him. And some little John. Sure, John wanted to go with Grandpa, right? Grandpa goes to eat, he goes to do fun stuff, go. And so there I was, that mom, sending my kid out to do what I should be doing. This whole time knowing that I should have been in church, right? And my daddy scolded me, telling me, if you just get right with Jesus, right? And so in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, right, well, you abandoned us how many years ago? So I'm trying to keep the score to make it okay that I'm not in Jesus' house, right? And I always referred back to Odessa to go to Rose Church. Well, you don't live there. You can't every Sunday go 2 hours away, right? So anyways, all that started with Charles, and he and I get together, right? He's got 4 kids, and I've got 2, right? That's a lot of kids, y'all. That's too many kids. Anyways, so I'm there, and I'm dealing with it. I'm dealing with life. I'm dealing with Charles, and the whole. It's just a huge community talk about. So I got to be proud, right? I got to walk through that town knowing what they're saying, you know what I mean. So I'm really tough. So I know I can do it, but they don't know. They don't know my struggle. They don't know I'm like, they have no clue what's going on. You can't wreck a marriage if I can't steal someone's husband if he didn't want to leave. That kind of thing. It wasn't just me, So I started loving this guy that was just wonderful to me. He came to my house, and and my dad, but before this, he kept telling me, you need to meet this guy that we call Charlie Wong Tong Hatchet Man. And I'm like, Dad, what? Is he your drinking buddy? Sure enough. He was my dad's drinking buddy. And I'm like, whatever, and we laughed, and there it was. It was the same Charles. It was my Charles, right? And I'm like, whoa, kind of like a Jesus thing. Because I kept praying, bring me I need someone that's just going to love me. Nothing else. Who cares about my baggage? Who cares about my heartbreak? Just love me, and look what I got.
Amen.
I got a wonderful man, right? And I got 4 good kids that I take care of, and 2 of them didn't care too much, so they went with their mom, which that was fine. And in this middle, by this time, Charles is a horrible alcoholic. I'm reliving my life in Odessa. I don't want to be with a drunk, but I love him, right? And I got kids that are teenagers telling me, what are you doing, Mom? This is you're repeating history. And I'm like, no, I'm not. So I'm preaching to Charles every day about Jesus. But I wasn't living it. But I was telling him about it. And we went over the railroad tracks one day, and he was mad, and he was cussing God horribly. And I told him, you just can't do that, Charles. He's going to get you. Well, a week later, Charles got he went to rehab, right? But this whole time, I'm preaching it while Daddy's standing over my shoulder pushing me. Go to church, Stacy. Go to church. Go to church. And everyone, right? Just wasn't for me. These people don't understand me. Nobody knows, right? Can't find the right person. The preacher, bro, was far away. And this whole time, every good thing that happened, bro would show up. Brother Dewey, he would show up. He paid and married us. Just wonderful things that bro. And I really miss bro. And so, I was like, all right. And so Daddy's still telling me. Well, by this time, something's wrong with Daddy. And he won't tell me. And he won't. Dad was real stubborn, like a couple of us in the family. And he just wouldn't let me know what was wrong. Because he had seen all the heartache, all the heartbreak, right? All those hard hits that he really made a difference in my life. And he didn't want to tell me that he had cancer. So Daddy he came over for Thanksgiving. This was in the kids' caution was like 16, 17. Oh, by this time we got my daughter's best friend, Canberra. She got dropped off at our house one day and just really never left, right? But all this time when we're trying to get sober, Charles, we're going to AA meetings, Al-Anon, God, Charles, and then here comes Charles. Jesus touched his heart, and here we go. Like, he brought Jesus alive in our home. He brought him back to us. So we would try to preach to these girls and these kids, and I try to tell them the right way to go. Thank you. And I would just be that one to stand back and just be the leader, but never follow him. So then Charles got sober, and our lives changed. Our lives changed with him praising God all the time, and then we slowly got out of AE, and then we still never had a home church, really. We never really did, right? So the girls they didn't end up finishing the New Deal. I ended up taking all my kids out of New Deal by that time. None of my kids that I raised graduated, only Mariah, right? And so I know that for Charles to stay sober, we got to get God in the house, right? We got to bring Jesus. We got to bring him home. And my daddy was just right by this time. Daddy was he kept on. We went a few times. Even Daddy would go to Dallas for Copeland, like the Copeland people and all that. And I was just thrilled that my dad would go that far. But of course, this time he's talking to Jesus too, because he's going home, right? He's going home soon. So Daddy died Christmas Eve. That was a hard one. That was probably one of the worst ones besides my grandma. And they all hurt, but Daddy's was different. Because he wouldn't let us help him. And so, Daddy's gone. Kids are almost graduating. I've still got this thing about God in the back of my head. Well, when you stop taking people that I love, so I'm kind of not mad at him. I want to know why, right? And those aren't questions I can ask. So down deep, I know better, but I know that there's a better tomorrow, right? And I'm like, so I got real depressed after my dad died. I missed him like crazy, and I was mad at my family because they shunned him, and I had a lot of anger. So I got real depressed. I gained a lot of weight. I love food already, and then put sadness on it. Here we go, buffet on, right? And I fed my feelings, and I hurt all the time, and I started just not knowing where to go, right? And this whole time, we went to a couple of churches with my brother back then, and Charles was saying, maybe we need to find a church, right? And then we hear all the Scarboroughs go here, or they go here, and, and we're kind of intertwined with the Scarboroughs, family-wise, and I'm like, always had a reason why not to go. I always found a good enough reason not to go to church. And so I started taking care of this little old lady named Addie Dunn. And it started in Caroline. She had dementia and she broke her hip. And they had money. Mr. Dunn and they had all kinds of money. But I got to ask to I'm a caretaker. I love to take care of someone. So, and I went back to caretaking, got out of the restaurant business, right? And so I would hear him talk about Miss Addie. And that all these years she was really out of her mind and no one kind of knew, because you don't know. They function just well enough so you don't see it. And you go back and you reflect on it. And their family, they're all tore up about Miss Addie's. But what I did know about Addie is that she didn't take much crap from nobody. And she'd tell you like it was. But there's one thing she was in church every time the doors open. Right? And so I'm taking care of this lady that don't even talk hardly, And I'm like, that's great that God's, that she's got that. I was just loved it. Well, then a preacher came over. Mr. Dunn said a preacher, Joe Perez is going to come, one of my friends, my farmer friends, preacher, and he's going to pray. So he prayed, and his prayer was so beautiful. I told Charles, go to church. So we started going to church, right? I started practicing when I was preaching, right? Not in verbatim, word for word, because it's hard sometimes for me to understand stuff, but I can hear. I don't read it, I hear it. And so we started giving it to God, right? And this whole time we'd go back home, give it to God, just living Jesus, knowing He's there for me. You guys, He had answered so many prayers I didn't even see that He was answering. He was lining me up for awakening call from His Father. It was God telling me, girl, where you been? I've been waiting on you this whole time, Stacy, and you never saw it. And so I started giving it to God. Started giving everything to God. I gave it all to God. I gave all that anger, the frustration, his ex-wife, all that. I just gave it to God. I started having grandbabies that love me. Right? All these great things were happening. And there was God saying, where you been, Red? Where you been? So we just kept giving it to God. And then my daughter, she starts telling me some things that she's not sure about Jesus and God. And that she's not an atheist, but I don't really know what you call it. And it destroyed me. She's my angel from heaven, from Jesus. From my mom. Like you gotta know that. I know it. I know it in my heart. And so this little angel of mine is telling me more or less that she has doubts about our Jesus. And so that was hard. And our preacher didn't deal with that very well. He didn't know how to talk to me or anything because he bashed that kind of life also in his mind. So I can't get anything from him, right? And so my sweet husband adored this preacher. He loved him. And they're good, really good people. But I started seeing his flaws, the preacher's flaws, and it started working on my psyche, right? And so I didn't really care. I didn't want to go there anymore. I was bored. Same old song. I mean, I really didn't. And I kept thinking, God, if it's just me being tacky, take these thoughts out of my mind, right? And trying to get right with be okay at this church, right? And I didn't like it, didn't want to go. I didn't even need a reason not to go. All those reasons didn't matter anymore. Not going. And I seen the look in his eyes that I was giving up. Like, why are you giving up? Because Charles just keeps on giving. And it wasn't I was giving up on God or Jesus. I was giving up on that person that I looked up to. So hard for answers, like we all do. And he's just a person. So I had to realize he's just a person, Stacy. You need to go a little deeper. Amen. So you need to start, you need to go a little deeper. And you need to figure out you before you start trying to figure out someone else. So here comes sweet old Charles. And says, don't worry about it, babe. We'll find somewhere else to go. So I said, okay. I wanted to make sure he was okay. So we would sing songs with our grandbabies and we would talk about Jesus. All my grandbabies, they know it. Lala, what is Lala doing? She's in there singing songs with Papa, or she's telling us about, I was telling them, I was preaching again to them, telling them everything they should do, but I'm still not quite in there right? And though I falter, I'm not perfect, And John's really by this time worried that Charles is going to fall back into his alcoholism. John fought that forever. And I'm like, oh, God's got this guy. And I know all this. I know it because my God shows me the truth. He tells me it and I don't even know he's telling. So he's like, how do you know, Mom? I'm like, I just know. Like, I don't know how to tell you. So, we're praising God and we're trying to be the righteous people that we can be. And then let's see, I'm getting to the point of my dad died. I'm trying to think where I'm at. I don't know his mom. I want to know where his mom is. So we start researching. Charles left his mom 20 years ago. He had to leave away from his mom to stay with his family. So I don't get that. I don't understand it. So we start working on it. We find his mother, now to be my mother-in-law. I mean, at this time, she's just an angel, right? And of course she is. Anyways, because of Charles. And so I kind of get to know her, and she helps me a little spiritually about God. She helps me. We talk when I need her. And then she got sick. She died. And that's really... Did she die before Bill? Yeah. So that was hard. That was harder for Charles. And probably me, because I just adored her. But that was something. And she committed suicide. And everybody was saying she wasn't going to heaven. And I know better, because when you're that sick and your body's not right and you have a spiritual connection with God, she talked to him before. You know that they had their own thing. So that's not anyone to jump in and say, so I got mad at people for feeling that way that I had been told my whole life. I felt it too. But not with Tish. Because she showed me that no one's the judge, no one's the jury. Amen. He brings you here, he takes you home.
Amen.
Right? He does. God, the one I've been mad at the whole time. Why wouldn't he have took my mom? He didn't want her suffering. She had to go. She went to heaven, right? Like, I got it. After it took me a while, but I got it finally. That just because it wasn't all right for me to go, that wasn't me to say. Right? We all get a birthday the same way. Nobody can pick it. Nobody can pick the day they go home. So I start realizing that I've been neglecting just a lot of my spiritualism, right? My spiritual stuff that don't have nothing to do with anyone. Because I get in the car and I drive and I talk to Jesus, or I mumble to him, or I sing a song in the shower. I give it to my God the way I want to, because he lets me, right? And over all these years, he showed me the questions that I've had in his own way. But Tish made me really realize that was her struggle. That was her life. There was that I couldn't, all I could do was love her, right? For who she was. And that what she done was right for her, right? I'm not going to say that it was wrong. I'm not. I wasn't in her shoes. I don't, you know what I mean? She wanted to go out her way, and by God, she did. So, and I knew it was going to crush this guy, but I also knew he was very spiritual with his mother as a child. So I'm like, we'll get through this. Sure enough, we got through it. And then my aunt got diagnosed with lung cancer. You guys, she fought it for a little while, but that was the one that raised me, my mom's sister, and I'm still not happy with her. I don't. Now, have I asked? I probably have asked 100 times to give me better feelings, but I just get to a place in my life I'm just like, it's just something I have to move on from, right? If you can't fix it, go on, move. If you have a house that has a water heater, you put new ones in, they keep breaking and breaking and breaking. Do you keep staying there and try to fix it? Most people just move to another one, right? That's what I do. I move on when I don't want to deal with something, or I am not going to deal with it, right? And so my aunt died. Well, my aunt was my daughter's everything. And so watching that was hard, right? And I wanted to be sad. But I wasn't. Still not. One day I'm gonna be sad about it. But Bill's death, I just haven't really been sad about. I really haven't, because the funeral was so horrible. My sister had to get her preacher to come down. You got to remember, right before when Mama got saved, my aunt was like the leader of the pack. And then when Mama died, it stopped. There was no God. There was nothing, right? So she was mad at God. I know she was. But she had me water. And so anyways, Bill died. and I had to deal with my daughter. And y'all all know when you deal with someone that loves someone and you feel the hurt through you, it sucks, right? And so, Bill dying was, I don't know what. I don't know if it was a turnaround or what it was, but we went to the service. My sister had to get her preacher to come because there was no preacher that knew my aunt Arnold. And I almost throwed somebody in there, but it wasn't my place, right? Because by this time I had been shown that I'm only really kind of adopted daughter, but what are we really? What were we? Just kids. That's her niece and nephew. And there was no love in this chapel. Beautiful flowers. I mean, it was a beautiful service. There was no love. And my family was there, the ones that were left, right? My uncles and stuff. There never was much Jesus at their house. So we just sat there, and it was the worst feeling ever, y'all. I don't know if y'all have ever come across something like that, but it was horrible. And all I could do was feel sorry for all of us because through us following her, this is where we end up. In a heartless haven? How is Jesus' house don't have any love in it, right? There was none. Was there, Charles? Just so y'all know, it was horrible. So I'm sitting there going, what is going on here in my mind, right? So they stand up and they don't even say me and my brother's name as her kids, which it didn't matter to me. I don't care what they called me, you know? But it hurt my brother's feelings. But long story short, that was the worst service I've ever been to. And I've never been so happy to leave, right? But loving and consoling my daughter, she don't know Jesus like that, so she don't know what was missing, but she knew something was missing. And I started telling her, God, Jesus. Well, after that service, we went to eat, and I got so mad, like the devil got me good. I mean, I got ugly. And I said some things I shouldn't have, acted a fool. And it's funny how God comes back around and says, what are you doing? And this whole time you could have been preaching my name and lifting me up. Here you were, swarmed with the devil. So me and Charles talked about it, and I was like, well, when it comes to my Aunt Bill, I really need to watch how those feelings come out, right? Because it's all suppressed anger from childhood. And so I kind of just coded my heart. Right before she died, I kept saying I was coming to see her. And it was right before my birthday, and I went. And I hate to say it, but the hardest thing to do is not even go see her dying. It's just I didn't want to be in the same room with her. You know, and so I was mad at myself because I didn't want to love her through it. Because she really took good care of me after my mom died medically, right? She was always on top of my medical. So I was mad at myself for that, but still was just mad. Just the whole death thing, right? And you kind of expect it, so you just go on. Gosh, when was that? And then where Charles's mom dies, so we take a trip and we're going to get her stuff. And my dad's best friend, George, passed away on the way down there. That one hurt, right? And then, who else died? I don't know, somebody else died. But anyways, I've had a lot of death in my life. Well, then my brother gets a horrible wreck. By this time, I had Dr. Larry for 9 years. We didn't talk for years. I hated my brother because the way he was. And then we got back around him. And we took some people with us to church one day, and she was so full of the devil, she just squirmed in the chair. And so we giggle about it, because you know those people that you know they are not, they're unhappy there, they're uncomfortable. But then I look back and I'm like, well, I think I've been that person once or twice, right? So I'm like, don't be judging. So I've always grown my kids up to don't judge, don't do this, don't do what everybody else is doing. But I still catch myself doing it. Right? So I pray for it, and I say I'm not going to do it, and I'm not going to do it. Well, then my brother gets in a horrible wreck, and he's flowed from Midland to here. But 3 years before that, he got a pituitary aneurysm or something like that right here. And I just knew in the back of my mind, oh God, I'm going to have to take care of it. I said it, oh God, right to myself, just like that, oh God. So then he gets in this horrible wreck. He flies here to love it. He's in the silver bag and already looks dead. It's horrible. What we're experiencing is horrible, right? And that God hits me. Who are you taking care of? Who are you gonna take care of? Right? So really it's myself. Caring for someone is one thing, but taking care of someone else is different. So the thoughts come in my mind because they're rushing me into the emergency room. And so I'm hating myself. I'm mad that I said that. I'll do anything. That's my brother. He's been through everything with me, right? He knows not every little thing, but we were thick as thieves, right? Growing up. That's all we had is me and him together until I had caution and then my dad. And so the doctor comes out and says, he's waiting internally. And if we don't stop it, he's going to die. And I need you to sign this paper. Well, that's what my mom did. She died internally. So I'm in the back of my mind saying, are you kidding, God? Really? Again? Like, this is how I have to hear this? Is my brother's going to die the same way my mom is? And I'm like, no. No. So just keeping it to myself, dealing with moment by moment in the ER. You know how it goes. He rushes in and says, sign these papers since he don't have anyone. And Larry had my name somewhere. So I signed the papers to save his life, right? So we go into the chapel. And I can't get on my knees anymore because it hurts and I'm fat. So I kneel down on this chair thing. And I holler out to God. And I said, in your son's name, God, oh precious Jesus, save my brother. Don't let Larry die. Please, for me. I sat in there for a while, knowing that I had said, oh God, I don't want to take care of him. And at this moment, I'll do whatever it takes for him to live, right? Because I don't want him to go anywhere. I don't want him to leave me. So I'm getting worried about the surgery, so I go back in there. Charles is in there, Shai's in the chapel. They leave. I stay in there, and I'm telling Jesus what I'll do for him. If he saves Larry, I'll yell his name at the highest highs and the lowest lows. Please save my brother. Please. I haven't even came to you in a long time. Please save him, right? And this earning to save my brother overwhelmed me, you guys. And it was just a moment of me, Jesus, and God in the room. And he listened. He saved him. He saved my brother, right? And so we're going through hell. Larry's hurt. He's hurt so bad. 80 days, 20 surgeries. I'm always signing this paper. They tell me he's going to do what they need in DNR. All this technical stuff. And it's overwhelming, right? And the kids, and I'm all trying to keep them straight and set the ICU room and out in the waiting room. And it's horrible. It's just misery, y'all. It's so horrible. No one knows it unless you do it. And the night, I don't remember what day it was, but I was so tired and I had signed so many papers. And I was thinking about what I even signed for Larry and him getting blood and all this, and I was just home relaxing in my chair. And Dominic came in the house, and Dominic loved my brother. And he sat between our chairs and said, Lala, what's wrong? And I said, I'm just tired, Bubba. And he goes, I want to go see Uncle Larry, but he's on all that stuff. And since you told him to trach him through the throat, it freaks me out. He goes, but when he wakes up, I want to go with you. Because I've been living up there like for 17, 18 days by now. And I said, sure. Uncle Larry would love that. So I go to the hospital the next day, and they're telling me Larry's stuff looks good, and that they're about to take him out of the self-induced coma, that he's about to wake up. I've been waiting 17 days to see. He'd wake up intermittently, but he really wasn't cognitive, right? He was going to wake up and just slowly wake Larry up. And who was he going to see? He was going to see me, right? His baby sister. So he woke up a little. And I said, Larry, I'm going to run home. And I'll be back, right? And he's like, and he can't really do nothing. It's crazy how it was, but it was horrible. But he would shake his head. And I said, I'll be back. Don't fall asleep. Or, don't. And don't call me, but I'll be back. I was driving home. I got on 2641 in Quaker. I was on the phone to Charles telling him I'm coming to get the kids. There's the wait, Charles. My brother's awake. I heard the screaming in the background. What? No. I gotta go. Dominic's been shot. I left the phone, pulled over. I'd just been at the emergency room for all them days. I know that's why I'm going again, right? So I pulled over. And I said, I can't ask you to save him. Just save him to heaven, God. And God said, I will. So I finished driving home. And I lost my grandson. Almost 2 years ago, on the day my brother was waking up, Donnie was going to heaven. And I haven't ever, for however many days, ever been mad or sad or upset to God, because he did that for me. He saved my brother in the brink of an eye. He cannot save everyone. He can't. Medical does a lot, but as in a horrible incident, that's where Donnie needed to be, and I believe Jesus took him to be a soldier, because he's coming home. He's coming home soon, you guys, and Donnie's going to be leading it. That one, and that all these people ready to go to heaven, I never was, but now, can't wait to go see everybody I've lost and loved. And Donnie is like, I do everything for Donnie, and that's in Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, guys.
So if you saw my Facebook graphic, bring your tissues. If you don't bring your tissues, you've been warned. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
We serve an awesome and mighty and powerful.
Oh, and I forgot. I met Brian through this. I totally forgot about my Brian. And you guys, I met Brian. It's crazy. Caution, mention Brian. This is the caution. My daughter that really doesn't want to talk about God.
Yeah.
She found him for me and us. And he did a wonderful service for them.
Yeah, I tell
I
you.
wish you didn't know him, man. He's just been our rock.
Yes.
You will appreciate this. I was looking for a specific song for her today, and I couldn't find it. But in my search, it led me back to the funeral, everything that I had gathered in preparation for the funeral. And I was just in my basement yesterday, just bawling, just crying like a baby. And I thought to myself, I had a thought. I never even met this kid. Never even met him, and here I am bawling, And then it dawned on me that I didn't need to meet him. I mean, my love for his family is so deep.
Amen.
I didn't have to meet him, to know that he was good. But Anyway,
Amen.
so I didn't know what all she was going to talk about today. I just picked this song, and I think it's perfect. That's the way God works. Let's sing one more time, if you can.